Hey, hon, it's us. We are in a cabin. We're on the way home. Love you.
Excuse me, that was our exit?
Mom?
I've got a child back here and you're beginning to scare the bejesus out of me.
Oh my God! It's down here!
Welcome back. Are you ready for another story-driven horror film? And this one in particular has a lot of twists, bumps, and just crazy scenery, as well as some, let's say, spine-tingling, mesmerizing, and pretty outrageous.
Pretty downright disgusting.
Yes, very disturbing. But
Yeah.
we're going to talk about this. But before we talk about this, let me introduce the co-host, fourth corner herself, Lexi, who picked this film. And once again, she picked a film I did not watch.
Another one. So I picked this one, which is hard to talk about because it's out of my comfort zone. So I'm glad it's a first watch for you. And it's something, again, out of my comfort zone where it's going to be hard to talk about. And we're going to dive right into that. But I picked it because there was major twists and turns I did not expect. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about this one.
If this is your first time watching this show is mostly storyline driven horror films. Now, there might be some gore. Most of the time, there's very large amounts of a disturbing element. But this one in particular, there is possible triggers if you watch this film. So enter this film with caution. Just know that there is a backstory in this film that is pretty disturbing. So just be wary of watching it. But besides saying that, what is the synopsis of this one? Well, after being abducted by a serial killer with his mother, a young child named Rabbit is basically held hostage and must live within the confines of a home with the man who not only abducted him, but killed his mother. Directed by Jennifer Lynch, starring the magnificent, charismatic, and plays one of the best Marvel villains, Kingpin. In Daredevil, Vincent D'Onofrio as Bob, Iman Ferran as Rabbit, Connor Leslie as Angie, and Jake Weaver as Brad Fittler. So, a lot of the movies we cover, they have a lot of great opening sequences, which, if you love stories, they're the hooks. They're what brings you into being captivated to watching the rest of this film. So, this one in particular, we had a good opening sequence. We had basically a domestication of a child. So, what did you think about the opening sequence, and what did you think about the early domestication of Rabbit?
It was definitely interesting, and it does hook you in because there's a scene where you see young Rabbit and he's digging through like what it looked like a box of full of licenses, which we'll explain that here in a little bit. But he's digging through the licenses, and then he hears like a bell in the background. He's counting 1, 2, 3, and he's running. And we'll dive deep into that, what that means as well. There's a lot of meaning in this film that basically traumatizes Rabbit. And so it was just really sad to see that opening sequence, and it lures you in like, what the heck is going on? Why is he counting? Why is he looking through licenses? Why is there a bunch of licenses of different people? So it had a lot of questions and a lot of answers throughout the movie. But yeah, it does lure you in with it starts with trauma, and it was sad.
So, exactly when domestication, we'll give you a little taste of what we're talking about.
I'll have one job. You do what I say. You clean up my house. You only eat what I've left in my plate. This is your world. From now on, it is only me, you, and them.
So yeah, I thought that was an interesting point in the film that the fact that Bob has his kid as basically his captive, and he's telling him all these rules, like we just seen earlier about you will serve me food, you will not eat until I've eaten. So basically, leftovers are his food, and he has to clean up the house. And we learn later on exactly what Bob means by cleaning up the house. It wasn't just doing dishes; it was other things that Bob was having him do. You want to know what it is? Well,
Far from dishes.
Bob is like we say, he's a serial killer. So all of his victims, Rabbit, his duty was to not only dispose of them in the crawl space by burying them, but also going back into the room and cleaning up all the blood and the mess that Bob left behind, which adds another layer of how disturbing this film is because Rabbit witnesses this for a very long time to the point where we have a jump in the film where you no longer see the child Rabbit. You see a 18-year-old, 17, 18-year-old teenager who is still locked up in this house. Now, not only locked up in the house, there was a scene earlier in the film where Rabbit tried to escape. And Bob knew he was going to try to escape, so Bob waited for him outside and go to him to try to escape. And then after this sequence, he chained up Rabbit to the floor. And the chain was long enough where Rabbit could actually go walk around the entire house, but of course never leave the house. So that was a very interesting once we started learning a little bit more about Bob. Now, as time went on, we got to see a little bit more of Bob's cravings and what he did to women.
Mm-hmm.
But we just like any serial killer movie, we don't know what's the backstory about it yet. Bob is a cab driver, so one day he picks up this father and son, and they're literally in the backseat arguing, where the father starts degrading the son. And at this point in the film, you see Bob have a reaction. I mean, Bob wanted to beat the shit out of this guy. Let's be honest, he wanted to kill him.
Yeah,
The
he
fact
did.
that he didn't do it, that's surprising. But
Well, I
after
felt
this-
like he was like scared and from his trauma, which we'll
right.
mention that, but there's a big reason why.
Yeah, and then this incident kind of made Bob look at Rabbit differently. So the question I got for you is like, Bob wanted to start educating Rabbit in what he does and how to survive. I mean, what did you think of when Bob started the education of Rabbit?
So yeah, that's the reason why I picked this film specifically, because that scene where he's educating Rabbit starts to build this weird like father-son moment with kidnapper and kidnappee. And I find it more interesting the book he chose. I don't know if you caught that. He picked like a psychology book and an anatomy and physiology book. And he basically was asking like, I want you to figure out basically why the mind is fucked up. Why do we think these things, do these things? And then, Rabbit's like, oh, he wants to study. And that book was so specific for this film in certain scenes that happens later on. And it like kind of bit the kidnapper right back in the ass in the long run, if you think about it. But again, this film was so hard for me to watch and come out of my comfort zone because my limit with horror movies is brutalization against women. So it was very hard to watch, but I thought it was so different for someone to take a film who kidnaps someone else, because how many movies are there with kidnappers? And for this one to kind of build like a weird dysfunctional relationship between father-son was interesting. And the fact that Rabbit had studied such, a book that saved his life, so to speak. That book saved his life. And we'll explain that here in a little bit. But that whole scene is why I picked this film, because I just thought the dynamic between the two were just incredibly weird, sickening, disturbing, but it worked.
Bob likes to play a game where he brings a box of IDs, and they split the IDs like they're freaking like cards,
A
playing
game
cards.
card.
And these, all right, you basically you say the name of the person on the card, and you got to say a fact about them. And that's the game they were playing. And the fact that there was a whole stack of ID cards
Tells you how many people he's killed. Not people, women he's killed.
Yeah, 'cause obviously, he was doing this way before he, took Rabbit captive and killed his mom. So he's been doing this for a long time. And the fact that he brags about it too, because at one point he told Rabbit, "Here's newspaper. I want you to go through clippings and basically clip out anything that they say about us." And the fact that he was happy that they had no evidence, nothing. But you're talking how he looked at Rabbit like a son, and there's one scene where he gives him a book, and Rabbit puts the book down, and then Bob says, "You're my kid." He goes, "Oh, I'm not your kid." So then he goes, "Well, do you know where your place is in this world?" And he grabs him by the back of the neck and looks around. He goes, "Look at all this. What do you see? And you're gonna tell me you're not my kid?" So after that incident with the father and son, Bob took it upon himself to basically, Rabbit, you're gonna have to learn this craft to survive in the world.
I mean, that's what set him up for that mindset with Rabbit as father and son. Because remember the questions he was asking? He was like, "Your dad ever throw a ball to you or anything? Did you play catch?" Stuff like that, like father and son supposed to do, which I don't think it's even safe to even mention his trauma. That's you got to watch the film. Like JR said in the beginning, it is definitely triggering. I think even for horror fiend TV, it's just too disturbing to talk about. So watch at your own risk. But it definitely triggered that, and that's why it changed his mindset. Like, I've been really mean to this kid, shitty to this kid. He still is, but he wanted to change the dynamics so that he can get Rabbit to trust him a little more.
Yeah,
that was my thought.
Yeah, because even asked Rabbit, "Do you want to stay chained in these walls for the rest of your life?" So he was giving.
And he left him. He let him off a few times, I think.
Hey, give him the opportunity. You have potential for freedom. You just have to learn what I do. And it got to the point where even Rabbit started questioning. Why do you do this? And then you kind of get an insight that Bob views all women as evil, and he does what he does. But like Lexi mentioned, we're not going to get into this. His basically PTSD. What set him off his childhood? You have to watch the film, because we rather have you watch the film. But once again, be cautious watching the film, because it is very disturbing, trigger moments. But then at the same time, Bob, he wants to basically be that father role even more, to the point where he wants Rabbit to enjoy what it's like to be with a woman, which, I mean, you know what I'm trying to say. So
yeah,
to the point where he grabs a yearbook and he puts it on the table and tells Rabbit, "Pick one." So not only,
and it's a recent yearbook, not like from 5 years ago. It's recent. Like, these are the people that's in school right now. Which one do you want?
Yeah, which right then and there, Rabbit was unaware that not only was he picking a woman to be his first time with a woman, but possibly his first, which that's what Bob wanted him to do.
He was training Rabbit to be him, and he wants to, I guess, carry on the tradition.
The legacy, yes.
Yeah.
The legacy they were building. It was. So this drives basically to the point where Bob forces Rabbit to pick a girl. So he picks one in particular, Angie. So Bob leaves the house, Rabbit's, at home, and he brings in this girl. And he brings her into the room, and he leaves, Rabbit and Angie in the room alone. So I want you to discuss what happens here, because you mentioned a lot how the book saved his life, and this is where the book anatomy saved his life.
This is my absolute favorite part of the film, although very disgusting, and I'll probably never watch it again. But it's my favorite part because you actually see Angie come in, And then the next scene you see is Angie come out lifeless and he's dragging. So you don't get to see what happens in the beginning. All Bob did was, here's your girl, have fun, kill her, basically. And but so you saw, there's blood all over Rabbit. She's being dragged out. And he does what he was trained to do, was to basically clean up the murder. Then they take a cab ride. He's like, I think you're ready. He's like, I want to hunt, meaning let's go hunt for girls. He's, getting trained into this field that Bob's in. And I like this scene because, again, he has blood on him. So you don't, and he gets in the cab that he was kidnapped in. And when they take the ride to go hunt for women, he just so happens to, Bob just so happens to stop next to what it looked like a bus stop. Some of those benches have like pavilions over the benches so you can sit and not so much wind or whatever, but those pavilions are glass. And so he just so happens to look over and he sees help written in Angie's blood on the side of the cab. So he's like, what the fuck were you thinking? Da-da-da. So they go straight back home and he's like, you know what? He's catching on. And he's like, let's watch the tape. What tape? Rabbit's like, what tape? Oh, we don't need to watch it. You're not going to be happy. So then I was like, oh, fuck. Here comes the twist, because something happened in that room we didn't get to see. Then it pans back to when Angie comes in and you get the gist of what happens in that room. And so long story short, because again, I want you guys to watch the film at your own risk. He ends up stabbing Angie because he's like, if you want to get out of this, we're going to have to work together. So please, do you trust me? In the 2.5 seconds that they met each other. But do you trust me? And he's like, or she just kind of just gave in to, because there was like some weird trust that they built in those 2.5 seconds of meeting. And he ends up stabbing her because of that book. He ends up stabbing her in a way that wouldn't kill her. And he's like, well, in about 48 hours, it's going to become serious, but at least we bought 2 days. Because of that book he was given and reading about the body and learning about the brain and the anatomy of everything, he was able to stab her in a way that couldn't kill her, and it bought him time to try to get both of them out of there. It was like the ultimate awesome escape, but Bob already knew something was wrong when he saw the help on the side of the car. So what did you think of that whole scene? Because that whole thing was insane.
Well, I think the setup leading up to it was pretty good because Rabbit knew he had to. Rabbit feared Bob, but he had to earn his respect. And there was a scene where they bring in a girl and she fights back Bob to the point where she busts him open, and Rabbit is the one that has to stitch him up. Which, right there, you kind of see the dynamic of Bob giving into wanting to have Rabbit more as his son. But, what was interesting is when he stabbed Angie, he told her, too, that, listen, I missed all your organs. Yeah, the thing, too, when he got into the cab, he got the PTSD of hearing his mom screaming when she got pulled out the cab. Yeah. Which caused him to even help even more. So the fact that they're in the car together, and remember, it's Bob wanted to make sure he was ready. And Rabbit acted very hesitant because he goes, oh, what about here? What about here? What about here? Because, these are where all the prostitutes are, but you don't want this area because this is like the lowest of all lives. Let's go something your age.
Like the different types of females.
Yeah. The businesswoman, the businesswoman. He was like, let's go around, women your age. That's where he went to colleges as well. And that's where he noticed the help. And he was like, what did you do? And he just punched the hell out of him, almost knocked him out.
Oh, yeah, knocked his ass out.
So when he gets back, he watched the video, gets back, he wants to kill Angie. And in the process, Rabbit gets... My
favorite part of that scene, though, when they get back to the house and he's like, Angie! That whole part was so scary, but it was well done.
Oh, it was.
Vincent's amazing.
Oh yeah, because they go in, they get into a fight, and Angie kind of rescues her. She helps Rabbit, and now mind you, she's injured, and she helps Rabbit. He ends up killing Bob. Prior to all this, there was something that Bob did to Rabbit to basically sever the tie of him thinking he still had a father. When he showed him the clipping of his father remarrying and having kids.
Yeah, the whole family, or his father moved on with a new family.
Which leads to a shocking twist in this film. Now, earlier in the film, the father was supposed to spend time with the wife and Rabbit, but he gave them money for a cab and told them don't take the bus because it's not a very good neighborhood, especially at night. And he dropped them off at the movie theater. So we find out at the end of the film, after Rabbit escapes and kills Bob, we find this twist that connects Bob to the father. Did you see that twist coming at all?
Absolutely not. That shit blew my fucking mind because you see the father in the beginning. He's very loving towards his wife, very loving towards the son, and he wanted them to be safe. No, don't take the bus, take the cab. And that should have been our fucking clue when he said take a cab. Yeah. And it doesn't like ring a bell at all. And until you like probably watch it a second time, but I'm like, there you see the little things after your first watch, but like he was so loving towards his wife and son and wanted them to be safe, and and she was like, oh, we can't afford that, don't use them, and he's like, just get home safe, take a cab, you don't need to wait for the bus in the middle of the night. Yeah. And yeah, that whole twist just fucking blew my mind. Because do you want to do the honors?
Yeah, if you want me to. So
go ahead.
Rabbit's father, Brad, paid off Bob, who the reason he paid him off, the reason he knew what Bob does, well, Brad just happened to be Bob's little brother. So everything that Bob went through as a child, Brad witnessed as well. And this was one of the things I think was the reason that Bob felt like, Rabbit, you're my kid because you're not this man's son. And you see that Brad had a little bit of a monster inside him too, with the way he treated his wife.
I know that you and I have talked off scenes a little bit about this film, and there was one part that I remember you said you liked at the end of the film, where when he confronted his father, he's like, you hired Bob, and he handed him the envelope with a check. And that check wasn't cashed.
No, because
it's so weird.
Bob wanted to be the father because he knew his. You think about it. This guy just hired you. Your own brother hired you off your basically sister,
family,
your nephew. Now, once did you get a feeling that Rabbit was ever in danger with Bob?
And you almost feel bad for Bob. There was moments where I felt bad.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Once you see what happened to him as a child, you kind of, you do feel bad for him, the fact that he had nightmares about it. And then a couple scenes later, Rabbit's having almost the same nightmare where he's screaming and yelling, and Bob has, shows concern. But yeah, this is a very, very unique film. So yeah, let's wrap it up. Would you rate this film? What do you think?
What's that word you and Rick always use? Cinematography. Like that shit was disgustingly yet beautifully filmed, and they captured every single scene awesomely. There's nothing bad that I can really take from this film. Everything was done in a smart way with the twists and turns. But the one thing I did like is that, because at first I was like, well, why didn't we get like news reports, or we didn't see scenes going back to that? And I like that they didn't do that. They were vague about the father and the way, because you can prolong the movie, getting the news involved. But I like that they kept it out of it, and it was very focused on Bob and Rabbit. Yeah. And Angie. She was a good character.
She was. Very good character. So what do you rate it?
Oh, definitely a 5. And it's sickening because, again, this was out of my comfort zone. I'll never watch it again because, yeah, it's too disturbing. Watch at your own risk, but it is worth it if you want a good story.
For me, yeah, I mean, cinematography was beautiful. It really represented the isolation that Rabbit was in.
Mhm.
I like when they use like for inside, like a yellow coloring for the
Yeah.
background lighting. I just love that look. I mean, the ironic part about it is that they kind of needed each other, which I think was a good driving point in this film. It was a weird dynamic, but I mean, Vincent D'Onofrio. I mean, watch Daredevil, Kingpin. He's coming back as Kingpin, but I mean, he really sold his character. Everything about this film was on point. I mean, it's disturbing, great storyline, cinematography, the directing, the acting, the different kind of shots they showed. One of my favorite
Yeah.
shots was where you just see the chain going into like one of the rooms. I mean, that was beautifully done. I mean, this film it keeps you watching, and even when you get those moments that's disturbing, you're still captivated because you want to see what's Rabbit's reaction to everything that Bob does.
Right.
I think this is definitely a hidden gem. People need to watch it more. Be cautious watching it. I don't want you guys yelling at us. You made me watch this movie that's really messed up. Joe usually does that. We don't, but this one is definitely worth the watch. To be honest, I'm going to give it a 5 because I couldn't find anything to nitpick on this film because it
Me
was
neither.
so character story driven that the scenes where you got the violence didn't feel like it was like just thrown in there. There was a need for
It
each
was not
scene.
overdone. It was not overdone. Not everything was just done in an intelligent way. The director really put thought into this. Very sick thoughts, but that's a horror movie for you.
Definitely a
And
5. Yeah, watch it. I think it's a good film. Hidden gem all the way. Hidden gem. Um, we'll try to see if Joe Psychologist maybe puts this on one of his shows.
movies
But
that fucked me up
oh yeah,
because it's fucked up.
it is messed up. It is messed up. Like I said, trigger warnings. There's a lot of trigger warnings in
Mhm.
this film. But yeah, watch it. Let us know what you think about it because we're curious because this movie does not get talked about at all. I didn't know about this film. I'm
Mm-mm.
glad Lexi put me onto this film because I mean I seen
What am
Vincent
I, 3 or
D'Onofrio.
4 in of movies you haven't seen? Something like that.
Yeah, because Vincent D'Onofrio, I love him as an actor. I think he's so phenomenal, and to see him in this type of role was awesome to watch. But
Right.
yeah, that's it for us here on What's Your Story. We're gonna continue this little psychological serial killer, little role we're on, and we're gonna visit a 2016 film with another great actor and actress with James McAvoy and Anya Taylor Joy in M. Night Shyamalan's Split. Can't wait
I
to talk
love
about that
Shyamalan.
one. And we will have a special guest, so we'll let you know who that guest will be. But for now, we are done. Please like, subscribe, share, and if there's any story driven horror films you want us to talk about, let us know below. So this is JR, Lexi the Fourth Corner, Horror Fiend TV. What's your story? We are out. Enjoy and watch.
Cheers.
Peace.